you ever wondered how many of the people around you would still stand beside you if your power, your influence, your usefulness vanished? Picture this: you're surrounded by friends, laughter fills the air, and trust seems absolute. But then, a shift. Your fortune fades, your position weakens, and like shadows at dusk, those bonds begin to dissolve. Was it friendship, or was it convenience all along? In moments like these, we're forced to ask a hard question. Is anyone truly your friend? Or are we all just players in a silent game, one where loyalty lasts only as long as the benefit does? Welcome. In this quiet space, we look beneath the surface. Today, we turn to the mind of Niccolò Machiavelli, a man often misunderstood, not as a villain, but as a clear-eyed realist of human nature. His insights may unsettle you, but they illuminate something many feel but rarely voice, that beneath the surface of civility and affection lies something colder. And perhaps together we'll explore what Machiavelli saw when he looked at friendship, loyalty, and power, not in their ideal forms, but in their raw, unfiltered reality. Take a breath. Let's begin. From the earliest moments of our lives, we are taught that friendship is sacred, a bond forged not in utility, but in love, loyalty, and shared soul. We see stories of comrades who would die for one another, friends who weather storms side by side. But is this devotion real, or a story we tell ourselves to soften the coldness of human self-interest? Niccolò Machiavelli did not believe in the purity of such ties. To him, relationships were rarely unconditional. People may claim loyalty, but they act according to benefit. Men are less hesitant about harming someone who makes himself loved than one who makes himself feared, he wrote. Beneath his cynicism lies a simple, unsettling observation. When power shifts, so do affections. This doesn't mean that all connections are false, but rather that many are contingent. Think of a man who rises through the ranks of a political party. His phone never stops ringing. He's invited everywhere, praised relentlessly. But the moment he falls from favor, the silence becomes deafening. Where once were toasts in his name, now there is absence. This pattern is not rare, it is the rule. As Machiavelli noted, friendship often masks allegiance to strength, not to the person. The bond feels unbreakable only while it serves. When it no longer does, it dissolves like mist at sunrise. Even in our private lives, this dynamic haunts us. People may unconsciously value us for the way we soothe their loneliness, boost their status, or fit their narrative. And when we stop serving that function, we are quietly replaced. This does not mean people are evil, it means they are human. Machiavelli was not condemning humanity, he was simply describing it. And perhaps there is freedom in that honesty. When we let go of the illusion, we can see with clearer eyes. Not every embrace is warm for our sake. Some are warm for what we bring. But what then does that say about loyalty? If affection bends to utility, is there any place left for trust? Or is every bond merely a contract, hidden in the language of love? As we leave behind the comforting mirage of unbreakable bonds, we step into colder air, into a realm where loyalty itself may not be what it seems. Like frost forming on glass, the next layer begins to reveal itself, the art of allegiance, and the hidden machinery behind those who stay or walk away. Trust, in its most innocent form, is the belief that another will not harm us even when they have the chance. But in the landscape of power and ambition, trust is often not given, it is used. Like bait on a hook, trust can be offered not for the sake of harmony, but to draw someone in, to bind them subtly into obligation. Machiavelli understood this with piercing clarity. In The Prince, he warns that rulers should not be overly concerned with keeping their word, because others rarely do. Appearances matter more than substance. If others believe you are trustworthy, that belief can be wielded. But genuine loyalty, that is a different matter. It is not something you give freely, it is something you buy. In human dynamics, loyalty behaves like currency. It is traded, tested, and sometimes withdrawn. One might remain faithful to a friend, not out of love, but because betrayal would come at too high a cost. In politics, business, and even personal relationships, people weigh their allegiance based on what they stand to lose or gain. The psychologist Robert Cialdini observed in his studies on influence that humans are wired to reciprocate. When someone gives us something, trust, affection, a secret, we feel an invisible pressure to give something back. That's where the game begins. Loyalty becomes less about truth and more about negotiation, a silent economy of mutual benefit. You stay with someone because they protected your secrets. You defend them because they once helped you rise. Beneath the surface of affection lies a careful calculation. We might wish this weren't so. We long for loyalty that is unconditional. But in a world shaped by risk and reward, most loyalties have limits. The one who understands this can move through relationships, not with cynicism, but with eyes wide open. Machiavelli didn't advise cruelty, he advised realism. He saw that those who mistake manipulation for love often end up betrayed. Trust, he said, is not always a bridge. It can also be a snare, laid by those who smile while they measure your worth. And yet, even within this transactional web, a deeper question begins to stir. If loyalty is bought, can it ever be genuine? If trust is used as leverage, is intimacy even possible? As we navigate this delicate marketplace of allegiance, we inch closer to the heart of Machiavelli's most haunting insight. Not just about others, but about ourselves. For in trying to secure loyalty, we often become performers in a theater of masks. And behind each mask waits a role we are asked to play next. If this reflection is stirring something within you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. These quiet conversations help us grow together. Let's continue. If betrayal by others wounds us, betrayal by ourselves leaves a deeper scar. There is an enemy more elusive than the manipulator or the opportunist. It is the comforting illusion we spin to shield ourselves from pain. Self-deception is not a lie told once, but a quiet hum we repeat until it feels like truth. We tell ourselves that our friends would never harm us, that our place in their hearts is sacred, but in doing so we often ignore the subtle signs, the changed tone, the unmet glance, the silence after our most vulnerable moments. It is not that we cannot see, it is that we do not wish to. Niccolò Machiavelli, though often seen as a strategist of outer conflict, also grasped the internal theater of the mind. In the discourses, he suggests that people prefer comforting fictions over painful truths because truth threatens their stability. The more invested we are in someone or in an idea, the harder it becomes to question their loyalty. So we defend them, not because they deserve it, but because to admit the truth would unravel the narrative we have built. The human mind, as Carl Jung noted, contains shadows, parts of ourselves we deny or suppress. One of the darkest of these is the part that knows the truth, but stays silent. A person may stay in a friendship long past its expiration, excusing betrayal after betrayal, because they fear what loneliness might echo back at them. Or someone might trust a charismatic leader, even when the signs of manipulation are clear, because that leader gives them purpose or belonging. In such cases, we don't merely deceive ourselves about others, we deceive ourselves for others. We let ourselves be used, just so we can feel needed. But the cost of such deception is high, a slow erosion of self-respect, and the quiet haunting of regret. And yet, when we finally confront the lies, we tell ourselves, something astonishing happens. The masks fall, not just theirs, but ours. The ego, once desperate to be seen as loyal or good, cracks open. And what remains is not weakness, but clarity. A sobering light by which we can finally see the world and our place in it as it is. But this moment of awakening is not easy. It feels like walking into cold wind after years by the fire. And just as that wind bites the skin, so too does the next realization that even love itself, in the hands of the powerful, may be little more than strategy. And so we arrive at the next turning point, where affection is not what it seems, but a tool used by the cunning to bind us with warmth before the blade. At some point, after enough illusions have crumbled, one begins to see that emotional attachment, when unexamined, can quietly turn into a form of bondage. What we think is loyalty may be dependency in disguise. Machiavelli warned of this vulnerability not because he opposed relationships, but because he saw how quickly sentiment could be exploited by those who understood its value, not as affection, but as leverage. In The Prince, he advises rulers to be both lion and fox, to show strength, but to move with cunning. And part of that cunning, he implies, is to maintain control by never becoming too emotionally entangled. For in entanglement, we surrender clarity, and with it, power. To practice strategic detachment is not to be cold, but to be conscious. It is the art of loving freely without being blinded, of caring without being owned. The Stoics, particularly Epictetus, spoke of this too. They taught that what lies outside our control must not disturb our inner equilibrium. And people, with their moods, betrayals, and shifting alliances, are outside our control. Imagine a leader who shows compassion to their followers, but is not broken by their disapproval, or a friend who listens deeply but is not shattered when they are left behind. This is strength drawn not from dominance, but from inner stillness. A stillness that refuses to beg for approval or cling to temporary roles in others' lives. Detachment does not mean withdrawal. It means watching the world with soft eyes and a firm spine. It means offering presence, not possession. It means knowing that to depend emotionally on another for your sense of self is to hand over the strings to your soul. And those who understand this often find themselves freer, not lonelier, but lighter. They become the kind of people who can walk away when something becomes unhealthy, not because they feel nothing, but because they have learned to feel deeply without being ruled by those feelings. But detachment is not without its cost. As the warmth of dependency fades, a chill set in. A realization that power, when unmoored from affection, can become isolating. Like a king in a high tower, seeing the world clearly from above, but wondering if anyone truly knows the person behind the crown. And so, we begin to question, is it better to be loved and vulnerable, or untouched and alone? That question opens the door to our final reflection. A descent into the abyss of relationships, where love itself may be nothing more than strategy, and the game of power plays its final card. Betrayal is a word soaked in shadow. It conjures pain, rupture, the severing of a once sacred bond. But if we are to look at it honestly, not sentimentally, we must ask, is betrayal always immoral, or can it sometimes be an act of clarity? Machiavelli did not romanticize loyalty. He recognized that alliances often dissolve when interests shift. In The Prince, he writes that men are less hesitant to offend one who makes himself loved than one who makes himself feared. In other words, loyalty is fickle when rooted only in affection or habit. It bends under pressure. To betray, then, may not always be to deceive. It might also be to refuse to remain blind when the truth demands our sight. Think of the soldier who abandons a corrupt leader to protect innocent lives, or the friend who walks away from someone who manipulates and destroys behind the mask of affection. These are betrayals on the surface, but beneath, they may be acts of moral courage. Erich Fromm, in The Art of Loving, warns of immature love, which clings and demands, and contrasts it with mature love, which respects freedom. Sometimes, disloyalty is not a sign of weakness, but of strength, the strength to choose what is right over what is familiar. The philosopher Simone Weil once said, "To be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul." But she also warned that roots can strangle as much as they support. The challenge lies in discernment. Not all betrayals are noble. Some are born of fear, ambition, or resentment. But the truly ethical betrayals, the ones that leave us sleepless but inwardly aligned, are those that protect integrity when it is under siege. They are the moments when one chooses solitude over complicity, when one breaks a vow not out of cruelty, but out of conscience. In this light, betrayal becomes not the opposite of loyalty, but its evolution, a shedding of what no longer serves the soul's deeper truth. And yet, even righteous betrayal leaves behind a kind of ash. It burns bridges, creates silence where there was once laughter, and plants doubt where there was once trust. We carry that weight, but perhaps that is the price of self-respect in a world where power and affection so often collide. As we move from this chapter, we are left with a final, lingering question. If betrayal can be ethical, can love itself be a tool of control? And if so, who among us has not played the game? Like mirrors facing each other, we now enter the endless reflection of our own role in this delicate war of influence. We began with a simple but unsettling idea that no one is truly your friend in the game of power. Along this quiet journey, we peeled back the comforting illusion of unbreakable bonds, saw how trust can be wielded like bait, and faced the subtle enemy of self-deception. We explored how detachment, rather than coldness, can be a form of inner clarity, and we dared to ask whether betrayal, in certain moments, might be not a failure of loyalty, but a defense of integrity. What we've uncovered is not cause for cynicism, but for awareness. The truth is not that love or friendship are lies, but that they exist within a web of shifting motives, unspoken fears, and competing needs. To see this does not mean to shut our hearts, but to open them with eyes wide. It is only when we recognize the architecture of power, how it shapes our trust, our loyalties, our betrayals, that we begin to step outside of it. And in doing so, perhaps we find a deeper form of connection, one that is not naive, but conscious, one that can endure the weight of truth. As Machiavelli teaches us, the world of human affairs is rarely clean or pure, but it is navigable. When we shed the illusions that bind us, we gain not only insight, but a kind of freedom, a freedom to love with intention, to choose our alliances wisely, and to act from self-knowledge rather than self-deception. So take a breath. You have looked into the darker corners of human nature, and you are still here, still watching, still wondering. That in itself is a quiet strength. In a world where trust can be used and loyalty sold, the most radical act may be to remain awake, not bitter, not afraid, just awake. And from that wakefulness, a new kind of power is born, not over others, but within. Thank you for reflecting with me. If this journey spoke to something in you, consider liking the video or joining this mindful community by subscribing. Your presence here truly matters.